Hello, beautiful mamas. As a working mom, sometimes I can really feel scattered, unorganized, or simply just rushing from one thing to another and all over the place. Finding time for myself and finding my sanity can almost feel like an impossible dream. Can you relate? Well, this is why I have created my free Mama's Guide to Creating Balance and Harmony as my gift to you. This guide contains my top 10 tips to creating balance and harmony in your life, as well as 3 beautiful trackers to help you get onto your journey in a fun and simple way. I have found by incorporating daily self-care routines and practices in my life for as little as 5 minutes a day, I am feeling more grounded, centered, and calm. By me tapping into my best version through these practices, I am also a better mom, a better partner, and a better colleague. Well, really, just a better human being in all the ways. So, if this sounds like something that you would like to explore, click on the link in the show notes below and download your free guide today. We were all born with the innate power of knowing and wisdom within us. The challenge for many of us is that we were taught to seek answers externally instead of searching from within. And this is the reason why so many of us find ourselves going around in circles, searching for new ways, but could never find the way. The womanly way. It's not the way. It's not my way. But it is a pathway to support all of us returning back to self, reconnect with our inner wisdom through loving ourselves, knowing ourselves, and reconnecting with ourselves.
Tell me and be honest. Tell me should I've known.
So we can start to find our own way as modern day women. Are you interested? Well, sit back, relax, and welcome to this amazing journey. Hello. Welcome to this episode of the Womanly Way podcast. I am your host, Lala Angela Wang. Happy Monday as I record this podcast. I hope you are all well. Well, so a bit of a truth bomb, right? And a bit of an honesty exercise, but also I think this episode, this podcast actually, is really all about honesty because I want to present the most real and authentic, but just life in general. I think there's too many pretentious things online at the moment, and there's not enough realness that talks about motherhood, that talks about life as a full-time working person that's also got a family to run, that's got a business on the side, and that's got a child. So this episode is really all about, yes, a confession that I have failed at the 70-day challenge, which was meant to start on the 1st of December, which I set myself to do. But there's also a whole lot of lessons learned. So I'm just going to share that with you guys in this episode. There's also, I guess, this topic around discipline, commitment, routine, and daily practices. So I want to share with you guys my lessons learned around that. And it's really interesting. At the beginning of the year, that's often the topic most people talked about. And on my feed last week, the reason that I was inspired to do this podcast was because of 2 things. There was a discussion on one of the private groups that I'm in about what does discipline mean to most people. There was a suggestion about the comparison between discipline, self-discipline, and sacral discipline. And then there's also at the same time another post around from a former coach of mine that said, if a routine is not working, or if you can't stick to a routine, then that routine is not working, and that's obviously the routine that's not for you. And I find both discussions interesting, but it almost presents the two polarities around this topic of discipline, around our commitment, around having routine in our lives, right? One is very feminine. It's about self-discipline. It's about sacral discipline. What does that mean? And I think the reason I say it's very feminine is because my answer to it, I feel, is very feminine. And that has come a long way, I guess. And the other end kind of represents the old me, where I feel that if I cannot stick to a routine, then I have failed. The routine as a word itself is quite a rigid sense if you want to make it really rigid. So I think, both are about interpretations, and which, I did a lot of contemplating upon last week, having got back to work last week. I felt that, last week was I'm still integrating from my holiday mood back into work. And to be honest, I'm not fully back in work mode last week, right? I was still kind of in holiday mode. I started playing this online game. It's called Townscape, I think. Township. Essentially, you build your town. You earn money and all those things. And I was still playing most of the time when I can. Now, I always knew that I have a addicted personality, meaning if I am attached or addicted to something, I will continue to do it. It's really easy for me to get addicted to something. And it's part of the reason why I don't really watch a lot of series. That's why I don't have Netflix. I don't have Prime. I don't have any of those subscriptions, because I know what will happen, right? When I have unlimited access to TV shows and things, I could very easily get addicted. But at the same time, I know that sometimes I just need to give myself a break. So over the weekend, I did a bit of reflection, and it's like, okay, it's time to round ourselves back in. But at the same time, I did a lot of assessment and reassessment and consideration after really decided that the 70-day challenge really wasn't for me. I did a lot of inner reflection and looked at what lessons that I have learned. Sorry, I think maybe before I jump into it too much, I feel like I jumped ahead of myself. So the 70-day challenge is a challenge that was set by one of my mentors, Leah Steele, as part of her seven strings movement. So every day for 70 days, there are 7 essentially tasks that we must complete. It's a way of eating, something that we eliminate, 3 liters of water a day, and then there's 70 minutes of exercise or physical movement, 70 minutes of mind stimulation, learning, 70 minutes of spiritual practice, and 70 minutes of business activities. I went in gung-ho and I was like, yes, I can do this, right? 100% believe that I could do this. And I did it for the first probably 2 to 3 weeks. But then what I realized was an old pattern of mine started to come up. I was really tired, right? And I couldn't do the things that I am meant to do on a daily basis as well, because I'm tired. And so slowly but surely, I was unable to meet especially the exercise component or bits and pieces, right? So at first I was really upset that I couldn't do it. And then I kind of come to peace with it. But really, what I had realized through my own reflection is that, and this is something I've been working on in the past 2 years, ever since I became a mom, there's this part of me that still want to prove that I want to be able to do everything. I am still able to do all the things that I used to do when I was not a mom. But there's also this other part of me, the competitive part of me at the same time, never really wanted to admit that even though I have this business, I also have a highly demanding job. Right, I was actually walking up the hill to my office this morning because I normally park down the bottom of the hill and I will walk up the hill. That's just like, I often have my inner conversations. And I was like, let's just have a calculation of how much time do I spend at work, and then how much time do I spend as a mom after work, and then in reality, how much time do I actually have left to do all these other things. So generally, we get up at 5:30, depending on the time and the day and how tired I am. Or sometimes, like this morning, because I was sleeping next to George, I don't have my alarm next to me. And he woke up at 4:30, so I tried to put him back to bed. So we both woke up at 6:10 when I woke up. So basically, I was planning to do my morning routine at 5:30 before George gets up. Well, that didn't happen, right? So essentially, if you could pretty much say from 6 o'clock till dropping off George, let's say normally around 7:30, I'm being a mom. I'm looking after George and making sure both of us are organized to get to daycare on the day that Scott works. On the days that he doesn't work, yes, I have a bit more flexibility, right? So let's just say from the moment that I get up till I get to work, I'm pretty much doing my mom thing. So I normally get to work about 8, and from 8 to say about 4, I'm at work. And I do focus on my work when I am at work because, like I said, it is a very high demanding job. And it is a job that pays the bill, right? I think a lot of people think that when you have a side hustle, the aim is always to eventually have it take over the job and phase out, or some people say retire early. But I also believe there are a majority of the population, especially around now when, to be honest, finances are tough at the moment, especially for a household, right? There are a lot of us that are quite happy having our day job and having additional streams of income as side hustles or investments. I, for one, love my job, and I think for me, even if I eventually leave corporate, I will still have a business that is relating to what I do, that it's relating to building aged care and retirement living facilities, because I believe that's part of my purpose. I believe that's part of what I do, part of what I love, part of what lights me up, part of what I do to contribute to society, and I love it. And so if that's the case, why would I be distracting myself during working hours with other things? Right. So when I'm at work, I'm focusing at what I'm doing. So that's from 8 to 4, and then daycare pickup. And George used to sleep a lot earlier. So I used to have 7 o'clock onwards. That's my time. But as parents, you would know, as your kids grow older, they sleep later. So now, at the moment, it's around 8 to 8:30 by the time he's fully asleep and then left his room. So really, if you look at it, realistically speaking, I have a very short window of time between, let's say, 8 o'clock to 11, maybe 12 maximum. So that's 4 hours, right? But if I do these 4 hours every single night, I will be exhausted. Because to me, I need a good 6 or 7 hours sleep a day in order to be energized and be able to do my mom things, do my corporate things, and do my business things with a clear head. So for me, really, ideally, 11 o'clock is the latest that I should hit bed. That's 3 hours. In that 3 hours, I have to do meal preps, house chores, podcasts, writing blogs. And on top of that, somehow do maybe some exercise, maybe some spiritual practice, maybe some learning and other business stuff. So it's not a lot of time. Yet I was expecting myself to run my business like I am a full-time business owner, just like all my other peers online, because that's what's expected of us, right? So for the longest time, I gave myself a very hard time for not being able to live up to that standard of someone who's running a full-time business. Now, when I come to that realization last year, yes, it took a weight off my shoulder, but again, it's been a process of unlearning, untraining, right? So really be kind to myself, but also training myself to think differently. Now, this accepting the 70-day challenge is like me going back to an old habit of my God, yes, I can do this. Not realizing, hey, we're going back into an old pattern here where we say yes to these things, but it's actually taking too much of our energy and taking us away from being able to do what we needed to do on a daily basis to run our lives, to do the things that we need to do in order to survive and thrive and be successful. To me, the reality is, if we want to talk about discipline, I need to be more disciplined around how I spend my energy. I need to be a lot more disciplined around sleeping more, about, retaining my energy, but recuperating and regenerating my energy. Instead of being more disciplined around having a very rigid and structured routine like the 70-day challenge, for example. So this leads me back to the question around, what does discipline really mean to me? And then I'll answer the question around what this routine and daily practice actually looks like for me now. And I'll give you a bit of a before and after examples. I do call it masculine and feminine, but without going into too much detail, because I can talk about this all day. I think having a routine and discipline and, all those things, that is already a masculine action because it gives framework. But we can talk about it later as well. I just want to set the scene so you know where I'm going to. So for me, and this was a question posed to all of us on this private Facebook group that I'm in. So what is discipline? And to me, discipline is something that sets the perimeter of my life, the boundaries, how I wish to run my life. And I kind of describe it, I love to use masculine and feminine in this description. I kind of describe it as the riverbank, or like a container that contains water, right? discipline itself is like the boundary, the container. And depending on how you set up this container, it's going to set up how the water flows in your life. And water flow is how I describe feminine. But you could have a very long and narrow, or you can have a very long and narrow river that runs really rapidly. Or you could have a very wide riverbank that just flows slowly through, right? And I describe the more masculine me is like a narrow, fast stream river. It just goes. But that requires a lot of energy. And for me right now, it's almost too much. It takes out too much energy from me because, to be honest, my job and being a mom probably takes a lot of energy as it is, right? So my discipline, so some people might be the opposite of what their discipline looks like, but my discipline is more kind of like the sacral discipline or the self-discipline around what do I need to do to really look after myself so I can be at my optimum, that will allow me to flow in ease and in peace and going through my life. And that is really the set of boundary, the set of containment that allows me to operate in my most optimum state. Right? So I love the description of a sacral discipline because I can then go with my feelings and go, okay, what is the best thing for me? And that's a very different look in terms of the old me would look at disciplines as like a set of routines that you must follow. Like, it would have been getting up at 5. Well, actually, I usually get up at 4 to get to 5 o'clock gym training because I had to drive there. I would have been getting up at 4, goes to the gym 3 times a week, eat a certain way that's very strict, like macro counting, or, that's literally like protein, this much protein, this much carb, this much vegetable, this much fat kind of thing. But now for me, it's like the discipline is more around what is best for me. What is the best thing for me? And that leads me to my routine, right? What is the best routine that is going to give me optimum result around my life? And I don't use daily routines anymore because, quite frankly, it just doesn't work with our families. Got on a fortnightly roster, right? So my routine is more like a fortnightly routine. But then also, I've got a monthly routine as well because I have my cycles. So it's really, for me, a routine is something that is more of a bigger picture. Again, we talk about the container, right? I am using a bigger container that will allow me the creative flow to flow in this flexibility. The more flexibility I can give myself, the more likely I am able to achieve what I would like to achieve. Right? For example, some people might say I go to the gym every single day. Well, that's just not possible for me. I can't even go to the gym 5 days a week, right? Instead, this year, what I have implemented is, okay, let's go 1 day a week. Let's just go 1 day a week. And then once we did 1 day a week for, let's say, a month, let's do 2 days a week. And then let's do 3 days a week. Right? And then what I've even done was I signed up to a gym because I was making all these excuses like I can't go more than 1 day a fortnight. And then I literally caught myself thinking about it, and I was like, no, Lala, that's BS. Yes, maybe you only be able to go to a class every fortnight because of your schedule. But the gym opens until 9 o'clock. It's literally 5 minutes walk away. You can go onto the treadmill and walk for an hour, and that's still an exercise. I was like, oh yeah, I can do that, can't I? So then I signed myself up for the gym. It's also probably the most economical option for me because there's flexibility in there, right? On top of that, I also want to be able to do bar classes because I love bar. It's just one of those things that I love. And there's this gym that I love as well with the instructors I love, but unfortunately they only have one or sometimes maybe 2 classes a week that I can go to. So instead of signing up for the membership for that, because it's twice as expensive as my gym membership at the moment, I allow myself the flexibility to pay for one-off classes because that gives me the flexibility. And that means I can be creative and have my flow within these options. So I think for me, in a sense, routine and discipline now is about flexibility and options. So I don't feel like I'm trapped in this rigidness. I think that's also a manifesting generator thing. There has to be enough flexibility in my life. The routine also looks like, for me, that perhaps, instead of doing all those things that we're talking about in the 70-day challenge every single day, I have one thing that's a non-negotiable. And for me, that's journal. I don't care whether I journal 5 minutes, whether I can only do my gratitude, or that I actually have time to do it. My non-negotiable is to journal, but also to journal in a meaningful way. So what I used to do was, in order to fulfill the task, even though my eyes were closed, I would still scribble something on my journal. But that's not really intentional, is it? It's doing things for the sake of doing things. So for me, my discipline is that I have a non-negotiable, and my job is to make sure that I do it consciously. I do it with intention. I do everything that I do with intention. So for me, routine used to be really rigid, like, I have to do this each day, I have to do that each day, just like the 70-day challenge. But after considering it, after really re-evaluating it, I set this new routine for myself. For me, it's more, okay, we will post. I don't even post every day on social media. I know this is against what everybody says, but some days I just don't have it in me, right? But when I do post, it's intentional. When I do post, it's because I want to share something. I don't post for the sake of posting. And this is what I truly believe, where intention comes. So every second day, I commit to posting. I commit to, like I said, going to the gym. At the moment I'm up to twice a week now. So I can do twice a week going to the gym, and then the rest of the week. So 5 days of movement to me. The rest of the week, so the other 3 days is 10,000 steps or something to make up for it. Like today, I can tell you right now that I have done So my app is telling me I got another 1,500 steps to go to reach 10,000 steps. So after this podcast, I'll be moving around the house and just to make sure I get my steps up. And that's me for today. Right, I have got actually a calendar thing in my work calendar every single day for an hour, lunchtime walk. I think the only really non-negotiables for me at the moment is my eating habit, because it's a diet. It's a way of living, really. For me, diets are a way of living, and I choose to do the carnivore diet, which really works for me in terms of flexibility because it's actually a lot easier. I just need to think of what meat I want and make sure I always have meat in my fridge, something that's easy to cook up, and it's done. I don't have to chop vegetables. Oh my goodness me. But in terms of learning, spiritual practice, and business, I make sure I do them on rotation, right? But my journaling is my spiritual practice. So I still want to be able to meditate. I play with my cards. That's my spiritual practice. But I really want to meditate more. So I would do my meditation, my learning, and my business stuff on rotation. So today, podcast day, that's what I do. And then I might do some business things. Scott and I are actually going to watch a webinar that was done last week on Captivation Hub as a learning today. And then I'll make sure that, I've done my journaling before I go to bed. I've actually done my journaling at work today before I started all the tasks that I needed to do. And that really sets me up for the day. Some days I can't get to it because, I might have an 8 o'clock meeting and my day is just really packed. But whenever I can do it, and I highly recommend anyone who thinks that, that sometimes I need to pick me up during the day, do journaling. Because I tell you what, that journaling session, it took me about half an hour this morning at work. It set my day up completely. All of the tasks that I set myself at work today, I've completed. And that is a great feeling, right? When you can go back to your checklist at the end of the day and go, oh my God, I have completed this. That really is truly the best feeling ever. And so I really recommend, even if you just spend like 5 minutes in the morning before you start doing anything, before you turn on your laptop, do 5 things that you're grateful for, write them down, and start with gratitude each day. That's a great start as it is, and that will raise your vibration and that will set you up to success for the day. So I know I rambled a lot and I may sound like I'm all over the place. And some of you might even think, oh my God, what is this thing? Because it's completely different to perhaps what you have in mind in terms of what discipline is, what routine is. But if you're a mom, you'll know, right? Sometimes our time is not our time. Our time belongs to other people, to these other little people. And so on the limited times that we do have for ourselves, I think we really need to start with kindness. We really need to start with compassion for ourselves. And then just look at, let's just be real here. What is realistic? Right? Because this is the thing also. If I continue to fail, continue to set super high standard that I can't achieve, then subconsciously I keep thinking that I have failed, I have let myself down. Then what does that do to me? Whereas I set realistic goals on things that I could actually achieve. So instead of 10 things a day, I might just have the one thing that I need to do today. And if I continually achieve those things and celebrate those successes, what does that then do to my psychology? One is setting ourselves up for success, for celebration, for winning. The other is setting ourselves up for failure and disappointment. Why would you want to do that to yourself when the world is full of disappointments, when life is full of disappointments? It doesn't mean that we expect any less from ourselves. It doesn't mean that we push ourselves any less. It just means that we need to be more realistic about what we could achieve and stop comparing ourselves with other people who just runs their lives differently. Right? So if you're a mom that's also starting a side hustle or has got a side hustle for a while and you find that you're struggling with time, perhaps take a lead from what I've learned, and this is really what I desire on this episode. Strip everything back, going back to the basics, and just instead of giving yourself a whole lump of things to do at once, start with one thing a day, one thing a week, one thing a month, and then add to 2, add to 3, add to 4. And this really is the message I've been receiving from my guides, for myself, and now wanted me to share with you guys, is that life doesn't really have to be so complicated. Go back to the basics, go back to the basics, go back to the basics. And the reason that the theme that I've chosen for myself this year is creating abundance from a place of health is exactly that. My guides have said to me that I need to go back to a sacral discipline, a feminine discipline. We need to lean back more and really truly receive. And the only way that we could receive is to creating space in our life that we're able to receive. And if I fill my day with just things that I'm doing and trying to catch up and trying to achieve all these things, I have no space to breathe, to receive, to allow communications and ideas to flow through. And this is probably another discussion for another day. Like, even when there's plenty of ideas floating through, I'm now also allowing the time to sit with them. Whereas in the past, I would have been, oh my God, I'm so excited, and start implementing. Then my whole life looks a bit scattered, right? Yes, I will do another episode on that, because I think that's something important to share as well, especially if you are a manic generator in human design, or you're just someone who's super creative and always have ideas. I think through maturity in my creativity, I've learned to sit with all of the ideas that come to me, because it allows me to filter, it allows me to settle in the idea and then see what actually sticks, instead of over expelling my energy all over the place and then end up achieving nothing because I am all over the place. We'll talk about that in the next episode. So for now, this is me today. I hope that you have taken away some ideas, some inspiration, some different perspectives. And hopefully you find your own flow. You find your own discipline. You find your own routine. Whatever it is that serves your soul and that allows you to be the best that you could be in the most optimum state that you can be. Love you all so, so, so much. And I will see you next time. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Womanly Way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast if you feel aligned to do so. Or check out our post-show discussions on my Instagram page @The Womanly Way. See you next time.